Richard Watterson is a man who never learned how to hold the world without dropping it. To most, he's just the big pink blur of laughter and laziness, a father whose joy is louder than his reason, whose hunger outweighs his sense. But beneath the mountain of donuts, behind the silliness that swallows his days, there is something fragile, a strange, almost sacred philosophy hiding under layers of chaos. The belief that doing nothing can sometimes mean everything. Richard is the philosophy of surrender, the embodiment of what happens when someone decides, consciously or not, that the world is too heavy to carry, and so they let it rest on its own. He didn't start this way. Once, Richard wanted to be good. Not in the moral sense, but in the simple, human way. To be useful. To be worthy. To make his family proud. But somewhere along the way, between broken jobs and forgotten responsibilities, between Nicole's intensity and his own confusion, he realized something about life that few are willing to admit. Effort doesn't always lead to peace. Sometimes the harder you try to hold things together, the faster they fall apart. So he stopped trying. Or at least he made it look that way. Because Richard's inaction is not always absence. Sometimes it's resistance. He refuses to become what the world demands. In a universe where everyone is running, Richard chooses to sit still. It's easy to see him as a fool, but Richard's foolishness is a kind of wisdom turned inside out. He understands that life's absurdity cannot be solved through logic. It can only be survived through laughter. His simplicity is his armor. When the world around him spirals into anxiety and ambition, Richard remains grounded, anchored in the immediate moment. What's for breakfast? Where's the couch? How much joy can fit into a sandwich? It's absurd, yes, but it's also profoundly human. He doesn't deny the complexity of existence, he just refuses to let it devour him. His so-called laziness becomes a quiet form of protest. Against stress, against fear, against the illusion of control. In the Wattersons' world of constant noise and motion, Richard's stillness becomes a mirror. Nicole, all discipline and drive, sees in him everything she represses. The chaos she can't afford to feel. Gumball and Darwin see freedom in him, but also danger. Aeneas sees disappointment. Each of them projects something different onto his blankness, as if his emptiness demands meaning. And maybe that's Richard's real role in the family, to absorb what everyone else can't. He is the chaos sponge, the harmless black hole where worry goes to die. That's why they can all keep going, because Richard doesn't. But even surrender has a cost. Beneath his laughter, there's exhaustion, not from doing too much, but from being misunderstood. People think he doesn't care. The truth is he cares too much, and it breaks him. So he hides behind food and foolishness, because those are the only things that never ask him to change. There's a heartbreaking innocence in that. He loves his family with a child's devotion, with the purity of someone who never learned cynicism. He loves without calculation, without expectation. And because of that, he's often the one who hurts the most when things fall apart. There's a scene, not a specific episode, but a recurring moment, when Richard looks at Nicole after she's yelled, after the storm has passed. His eyes soften and he smiles, small and guilty. He doesn't fight back. He doesn't even defend himself. He just forgives. Instantly. That's not stupidity. That's surrender as love. He accepts pain as part of connection, because he's learned that resistance only multiplies it. In a way, he's the spiritual heart of the family, not guiding them through wisdom, but through unconditional acceptance. He doesn't need to be right to love them. He just needs to be there. And he is there. Always. Even when he's failing. Even when he's the reason things go wrong, Richard never leaves. His presence is clumsy, chaotic but unwavering. That consistency, however unintentional, gives the Wattersons a strange kind of stability. In a house where everything explodes, emotionally, literally, cosmically, Richard remains. The couch may collapse beneath him, the house may crumble, the plot may reset, but he's still there in the morning, smiling, hungry, alive. His existence is proof that love doesn't need to be competent to be constant. His philosophy of nothingness deepens when you realize he isn't oblivious. He's aware in his own way. There are moments, quiet and fleeting, when you see a flicker of understanding behind his eyes. He knows he's a disappointment. He knows he's the butt of the joke. He knows he's let Nicole down. And yet, instead of collapsing under guilt, he shrugs it off. Not because it doesn't hurt, but because he's made peace with imperfection. For Richard, the human condition isn't something to fix. It's something to live with. He embodies the truth that failure doesn't cancel love. It coexists with it. That's why Richard's happiness feels different. It isn't born of success or recognition. It's the happiness of someone who has stopped expecting the world to make sense. When he laughs, it's full-bodied and pure, not because everything is fine, but because he's accepted that it never will be. His laughter becomes a kind of faith, an act of defiance against despair. It says, I know it's absurd, and I love it anyway. Richard's love of food is another expression of this philosophy. To him, eating is not gluttony, it's communion. Every meal is a small miracle, a moment of connection to the simplest joys. When he eats, he isn't escaping. He's participating in life's rawest pleasures. The taste, the texture, the ridiculousness of it. It's his way of saying yes to existence. Others chase meaning in work or success. Richard finds it in peanut butter. There's beauty in that simplicity. He doesn't need purpose to feel alive. He just needs presence. But the weight of nothing can still crush. There are times when his emptiness folds in on itself, when laughter becomes a shield too thin to hold. In those rare moments of stillness, when the house is quiet, when the fridge light is the only glow, you can almost sense the thoughts he never sees. Am I enough? Do they love me? Or just need me to be the fool? The tragedy of Richard Watterson is that he's never sure, and yet he keeps loving anyway. That's what makes him quietly heroic. He loves in the face of uncertainty, gives in the face of ridicule, exists in the face of chaos. His philosophy is not one of ignorance, but of forgiveness. He forgives the world for being cruel, himself for being weak, others for being busy. In a culture obsessed with productivity, Richard's slowness becomes radical. He refuses to measure his worth by output. His laziness, when seen deeply, is not moral failure. It's spiritual rebellion. He rejects the notion that to be human is to constantly strive. He teaches, without meaning to, that it's okay to stop running. That maybe peace isn't found in achievement, but in acceptance. And yet, his passivity also hurts those around him. Nicole's exhaustion is often a response to his inertia. His comfort becomes her burden. His stillness, her motion. Their marriage is the collision of two philosophies, discipline and surrender. And somehow, they balance. She keeps the world moving. He keeps it soft. She builds. He forgives. Without her, he'd dissolve. Without him, she'd burn out. Together, they are the rhythm of imperfection that makes their family whole. Richard's relationship with his children is an extension of that same paradox. To Gumball and Darwin, he's both role model and warning. He shows them the freedom of not taking life too seriously, but also the consequences of letting it drift too far. To Anais, he's both obstacle and object of affection, a living contradiction she can't rationalize. Each sees in him what they fear becoming or losing, and yet they all love him, because beneath everything, they sense his sincerity. Richard's love is never strategic, it's instinctive. Like gravity, it pulls them back when the world gets too strange. When viewed through this lens, Richard becomes almost mythic, a holy fool, the sacred clown who reveals truth through absurdity. His stupidity is a disguise for insight too simple for the clever to see. He reminds everyone that meaning doesn't have to be earned. It can simply be felt. He lives without purpose and yet becomes the emotional center of a story, obsessed with chaos. In a world that constantly resets, he's the one who never truly changes. Because he doesn't need to. His peace is unlearning. At night, when everyone else is asleep, Richard sometimes lies awake. The lights from the fridge spill across the room. The hum of the world quiets. He looks at his hands, soft, worn, useless, and smiles. Maybe he doesn't understand everything. Maybe he's failed more times than he can count, but he's still here. And that, to him, is enough. To exist is enough. To love, even clumsily, is enough. That's the weight of nothing. The gentle gravity of a man who carries the world by refusing to hold it too tightly. There's a moment in every life when laughter stops being a sound and becomes a shield. For Richard Watterson, that moment came so early he doesn't even remember it. Maybe it was in childhood, back when his dreams were still simple, before the world told him he wasn't enough. Or maybe it happened later when responsibility found him and he found out he couldn't quite hold it. Either way, by the time we meet him, laughter has already become his armor. He wears it everywhere. It protects him from pain, from thought, from expectation. But what's beautiful and tragic is that it also isolates him. Because laughter, once it becomes defense, can't quite become connection anymore. It's joy held at a distance. Richard is often called a fool, and the world treats him like one. But there's something sacred about that foolishness. Something ancient. The archetype of the fool, in every myth and story, is not merely comic relief. He is the one who dares to be ridiculous in a world obsessed with order. The fool speaks truth through nonsense, love through chaos. He is the mirror that reflects what everyone else hides. Richard fits that role perfectly. In the Watterson household, surrounded by intellect and intensity, his idiocy becomes illumination. He shows them, and us, what happens when you live without disguise. The sacred fool does not seek wisdom. He embodies it accidentally. That's Richard's paradox. He doesn't know what he's teaching, yet his presence teaches everything the others forget. He reminds them that love doesn't need logic, that happiness doesn't need meaning, that mistakes don't erase worth. In his failures, there's a strange purity. When Richard forgets an errand, breaks something precious, or ruins a plan, he isn't rebelling against his family. He's exposing the fragility of their illusions. His disasters reveal how much they rely on perfection. He forces them to see that love must include the mess. Or it isn't love at all. His laughter too carries layers. It's not the empty laughter of ignorance. It's the holy sound of surrender. When Richard laughs after everything goes wrong, he's not unaware. He's unwilling to let despair win. His joy is unconditional. It doesn't wait for things to get better. It simply insists that being alive is enough reason to smile. That's why, even when the family collapses around him, he never loses that silly grin. It's not stupidity, it's faith. Faith that life, however absurd, is still worth showing up for. The sacred fool is often lonely, though no one notices. People love Richard for his warmth, his silliness, his unfiltered affection, but few truly see him. They see the noise, not the silence behind it. They see the laughter, not the longing. Richard's heart is an open window that everyone looks through, but no one looks into. He gives love constantly, but receives it unevenly. And because he never asks for more, the imbalance becomes invisible. His family loves him deeply, but they rarely imagine the quiet ache beneath his clumsy devotion. That's the secret of the fool. His wisdom is selfless, and so it goes unnoticed. What makes Richard's foolishness so moving is its innocence. He lives in a world of contradictions, adults with childlike impulses, children with adult anxieties. Yet somehow he manages to stay pure. He's naive, yes, but his naivety isn't ignorance, it's choice. He chooses to see good, to forgive fast, to believe in the best possible outcome even when it's absurd. That's not stupidity, that's strength. The fool's mind bends toward kindness not because it doesn't know cruelty, but because it refuses to become it. Richard's relationship with Nicole makes this clearer than anything else. Their love is both hilarious and heartbreaking, a constant push and pull between chaos and control. Nicole is order in motion, Richard is entropy given form. She builds, plans, strives, he forgets, drifts, laughs. On paper, they shouldn't work. And yet, somehow, they do. Because where she burns, he cools. Where she doubts, he reassures. Their love survives not because it's balanced, but because it's forgiving. She forgives his failures, he forgives her expectations. Together, they create a rhythm, imperfect, volatile, but real. In the quiet spaces between their fights, something beautiful happens. Richard doesn't argue, doesn't retreat, he just loves her louder. It's as if he senses that beneath her anger is exhaustion, beneath her perfectionism is fear. And he meets that fear not with logic, but with warmth. That's the sacred fool's gift. He heals not through wisdom, but through presence. His simplicity gives others permission to rest. Around him, Nicole can finally fall apart, knowing he'll still be there when she does. Richard's foolishness holds space for her humanity. His parenting follows the same unspoken philosophy. To Gumball and Darwin, he is chaos incarnate, the father who forgets the rules, joins the nonsense, and sometimes becomes the nonsense itself. But beneath the absurdity, there's a profound lesson. He teaches them that adulthood doesn't have to mean losing wonder. That even when the world demands seriousness, it's okay to remain silly. In Elmore, where reality bends and logic breaks, Richard's perspective becomes survival. His foolishness is a kind of magic that lets his children exist freely. They can be wild, curious, and unashamed, because their father already is. And yet, foolishness has shadows. Richard's chaos often causes harm he doesn't intend. His forgetfulness hurts Nicole. His carelessness puts the kids in danger. His laughter sometimes covers guilt he doesn't know how to express. These moments reveal the pain of being misunderstood, of trying to love purely but being seen as the problem. The sacred fool always bears this cross. He brings light, but gets blamed for the shadows. And Richard accepts that silently. He rarely apologizes because he doesn't know how to put his heart into words. His remorse lives in small gestures, an extra hug, a goofy grin, a quiet attempt to fix what he broke. It's clumsy, but it's real. In this way, Richard becomes a reflection of everyone who's ever been called too much or not enough. He represents the gentle souls who can't keep up with the world's pace, who confuse others by loving too simply. His existence asks a question few dare to answer. What if the point of life isn't to understand it, but to laugh with it. That's his secret theology. He doesn't seek truth through order, but through absurdity. The more nonsensical the world becomes, the more he fits into it. In a sense, Elmore itself revolves around him, a universe where logic collapses, and only laughter survives. There's a beautiful irony here. In a show obsessed with chaos, Richard's chaos feels peaceful. His presence, though destructive, also grounds everything. When he's gone, the house feels colder. When he's there, even the disasters feel safe. It's because his foolishness holds no malice. He's pure chaos, not cruel chaos. That's what makes him so disarming. You can't stay angry at someone who truly has no darkness in them. His soul is open sky, vast, clumsy, but harmless. At times, Richard even becomes accidentally profound. He'll say something ridiculous, something meant to be a joke, but it lands with strange resonance. He might say, "If life gives you lemons, eat them whole, peel and all." Everyone laughs, but there's truth in it. It's a philosophy of acceptance. Take the bitterness with the sweetness. He doesn't analyze life, he digests it, literally and metaphorically. The fool turns philosophy into appetite. His hunger becomes a kind of spirituality, a craving for experience, for sensation, for the fullness of existence without overthinking it. The sacred fool's path is not glamorous. It's humble, domestic, almost invisible. Richard's life is a loop of small moments, eating, napping, loving, failing, forgiving. But in that loop lies something the others miss: contentment. He doesn't wait for a better day to be happy. He finds joy in the ridiculous now. When Gumball schemes, when Nicole worries, when Anais plans, Richard simply is. His stillness becomes the eye of their storm. It's not enlightenment, it's surrender so total that it becomes peace. There's a moment that defines this essence, a kind of quiet revelation. Richard sits on the couch, crumbs on his chest, laughter fading from the room. The family has gone to bed. The glow of the TV washes over his face. He stares at the static screen, blank but alive. For a second, something passes through his eyes. A flicker of thought, a whisper of self-awareness. And then he smiles again. It's not denial, it's acceptance. He's aware of his absurdity, his failures, his smallness, but he's also aware of his love, his family, his existence. And for him, that's enough. That's everything. Richard Watterson is not a philosopher in words, but in being. His life is a slow sermon on forgiveness, foolishness, and faith in the face of meaninglessness. The sacred fool doesn't conquer the world, he survives it with grace disguised as idiocy. And when he laughs, somewhere deep down, the universe laughs with him. Because in his laughter, there's something all of us recognize. The relief of knowing we don't have to be perfect to be loved. Laughter is supposed to be light. It's supposed to float, to rise above pain, to make everything easier. But for Richard Watterson, laughter carries weight. It's not something that escapes him. It's something that holds him together. It's the glue between fear and faith, the thread that keeps the absurdity of his world from falling apart completely. He laughs because he has to, because the alternative would be silence, and silence might mean thinking, remembering, understanding too much. Laughter for Richard is not just a sound, it's survival. He laughs at himself, most of all. The world expects him to be the punchline, and he gives it what it wants, almost generously. His life is a performance of cheerful failure, of tripping over the furniture of existence and pretending it doesn't hurt. When he drops the cake, forgets the errand, burns the dinner, he laughs first, so no one else has to. It's a preemptive forgiveness. For himself, for others, for the mistakes that make up his everyday. That's the secret behind his smile. It's not ignorance, it's mercy. He forgives the world by laughing at it. But laughter that deep doesn't come from joy alone. It comes from something much more fragile. A refusal to despair. Somewhere inside Richard, beneath the childish glee and endless appetite, there's a quiet sadness. The sadness of someone who knows he'll never be taken seriously. The sadness of someone who learned that people love him more when he's funny than when he's honest. So he keeps being funny. He laughs louder. He hides inside the noise of his own happiness. It's easier that way. To keep the world bright enough that no one notices the cracks. In the strange metaphysics of Elmore, where everything is exaggerated and nothing makes sense, Richard's laughter becomes more than a personality trait. It's a force of balance. He grounds the chaos by embodying it. When the world bends, he bends with it. When logic collapses, he doesn't panic. He joins the nonsense. His humor absorbs the absurdity, makes it livable. That's his unconscious wisdom. He transforms the unbearable into the hilarious. And in doing so, he saves everyone else from falling into despair. He is the world's unintentional therapist, treating absurdity with absurdity, pain with play. But laughter has a cost. The one who makes everyone smile rarely gets to rest. Richard's laughter consumes him. It becomes his duty, his mask, his identity. Without it, who is he? The family relies on his joy as much as they ridicule it. He is the mood regulator of the household, the emotional pressure valve that releases tension through humor. When Nicole snaps, when Gumball panics, when Anais analyzes too much, Richard's laughter cuts through the noise like a warm, clumsy reminder we're still alive. But that role leaves no room for his own breakdowns. He can't be the one who cries. Someone has to laugh, even when it hurts. There's a quiet tragedy in that. The clown, after all, is the one who bleeds behind the curtain. Richard doesn't have the language to express sorrow. When something breaks inside him, a harsh word, a disappointment, a forgotten dream, he turns it into a joke before it can settle. He's afraid of silence because silence lets the truth echo. So he fills every moment with sound. The laughter keeps the truth at bay. But every now and then, when the house is quiet and everyone else is asleep, the silence catches up to him. In those moments, sitting on the couch in the dim blue light of the TV, his face relaxes. The smile fades. You can almost see the man beneath the laughter. Still, uncertain, unbearably gentle. What's beautiful about Richard, though, is that even when laughter becomes armor, it never turns bitter. He doesn't use humor to hurt others. His jokes are never cruel. They're chaotic, yes, but not mean. His laughter always includes, never excludes. That's rare. Most people weaponize humor to protect themselves, to push the world away. Richard's laughter does the opposite. It pulls the world closer. He laughs with everything, not at it. He laughs at himself to make others comfortable, to make existence less intimidating. That's why his foolishness feels safe, because it's rooted in love. You can see it in the way he laughs with his children. When Gumball's schemes fall apart, when Darwin's kindness collides with reality, Richard doesn't scold. He just joins the laughter, no matter how disastrous the situation. It's not that he doesn't understand the chaos. It's that he refuses to let it steal joy from the moment. He teaches his kids that mistakes are survivable, that failure is funny if you look at it kindly enough. It's a philosophy of resilience hidden in slapstick. If you can laugh, you can heal. In that sense, Richard's laughter is a lesson in impermanence. Nothing is ever as bad as it feels, not forever. Nicole, on the other hand, doesn't always understand this. To her, laughter can feel like denial, a refusal to face what's serious. She sees his humor as irresponsibility. And sometimes she's right. But what she doesn't see is the courage it takes to keep laughing when you're the family's constant disappointment. Richard doesn't joke because he doesn't care. He jokes because he does. Because if he stops smiling, he might have to admit how much he's failed, how many times he's let her down. So he keeps the laughter going. It's his way of saying, I know I'm not what you hoped for, but I'm trying to make this life bearable for both of us. The most profound thing about Richard's laughter is how unself-conscious it is. It's not clever or controlled. It's raw, childlike, almost holy. When he laughs, he forgets himself completely. That self-forgetfulness, that surrender of ego, is something mystics spend lifetimes chasing. Richard stumbles into it by accident. His joy erases self-importance. He doesn't laugh to be admired. He laughs because the world, for all its madness, deserves to be met with a smile. It's innocence disguised as comedy, enlightenment hidden inside gluttony. And yet, the laughter doesn't erase pain. It transforms it. Every chuckle is a tiny act of alchemy, turning fear into absurdity, guilt into play, confusion into song. That's why the world around him bends toward humor. It's as if the universe responds to his frequency. Elmore itself becomes a cosmic comedy because its loudest laugh belongs to someone who refuses to stop loving it. His laughter becomes a gravitational field of compassion, reshaping the world in its echo. Where others see chaos, Richard sees punchlines, and punchlines make meaning out of nonsense. There's a moment that captures this perfectly. The family is in chaos again. Something has gone wrong. Something big. Something irreparable. Nicole's shouting. The kids are panicking. Richard, standing amidst the mess, doesn't know what to do. His first instinct is to laugh. And he does. Everyone stops. For a second they're angry, confused. But then, slowly, they join in. The laughter spreads, not because it's funny, but because it's freeing. In that sound, all the tension dissolves. No one fixes the problem. They just remember that problems are temporary. But love isn't. That's the miracle of Richard's laughter. It turns pain into presence. But laughter can't last forever. Eventually, even he gets tired. There's a subtle melancholy in those in-between moments, when the joke has ended but the silence hasn't yet been filled. Richard doesn't know what to do with quiet. It scares him. He'll hum, snack, or mumble nonsense. Anything to keep the noise alive. Because deep down, he fears that if everything stops, the laughter might not come back. And if it doesn't, who will he be? Without his humor, he's just a man who's failed more than he's succeeded, loved more than he's understood. But maybe that's the point. That even without laughter, he'd still be love itself. That's the truth he never sees aloud. Laughter isn't his identity. It's his offering. He gives it freely, without condition, because it's the only gift he knows how to give. And it's enough. For all his clumsiness, all his forgetfulness, Richard gives the world something most people forget to share: joy without agenda. In a house full of brilliance and pressure, he brings softness. In a world obsessed with control, he brings chaos that heals. The weight of his laughter is the weight of love, heavy, invisible, irreplaceable. And when he's alone, truly alone, sometimes he still laughs. Not at anything. Not for anyone. But just because he can. Because he's alive. And that in itself is absurd enough to be funny. That laugh, quiet and unshared, is the truest one. It's not defense or performance, it's gratitude. It's Richard's way of saying thank you to the world, to his family, to existence itself. Thank you for being ridiculous. Thank you for not making sense. Thank you for letting me laugh anyway. Laughter, for Richard Watterson, is not the absence of pain, but its echo. It's what remains after everything else has failed. It's the proof that even in absurdity, something good still hums at the center of things. And maybe that's the real reason the world never breaks him. Because as long as he can laugh, the universe can't quite convince him that it's hopeless. In that way, he's not just a fool. He's a philosopher in disguise, one who teaches simply by existing that joy is not the opposite of sorrow. It's what survives it. Love, for Richard Watterson, is not something he thinks about. It's something he is. It doesn't pass through his mind. It flows directly from his heart. It's unfiltered, uncalculated, and unending, like sunlight spilling through a crack. But love, when it's that pure, becomes heavy. It becomes gravity. It pulls on everything, his joy, his sadness, his every movement. Love is the reason he gets up, the reason he fails, the reason he forgives himself afterward. It's not concept to him. It's oxygen. He breathes it without realizing it. And that's what makes it beautiful and unbearable. Richard doesn't love selectively. He doesn't measure or strategize it. His love spills everywhere, on his family, on food, on random strangers, on inanimate objects that make him laugh. He loves because he can't help it. It's his default state. And yet, that very generosity often leaves him empty. Because the world doesn't always know what to do with love that doesn't ask for anything back. It treats it as simple, or naive, or unearned. But Richard's love is far from simple. It's the kind that survives ridicule. It's the kind that endures without needing to be understood. It's love as gravity, invisible, constant, inevitable. He loves Nicole with a devotion that borders on worship. In her, he sees everything he isn't: discipline, drive, strength, control. She is his center of gravity, the force that gives shape to his chaos. But that love, as warm as it is, carries weight. He loves her so completely that he doesn't know how to exist outside of her orbit. She moves, and he follows. She hurts, and he blames himself. His love is not partnership, it's surrender. And in that surrender, there's tragedy. Because when one person becomes your entire world, you lose the map back to yourself. But Nicole's love, for all its precision and power, needs Richard's too. It's his softness that keeps her from breaking under her own expectations. His chaos reminds her to breathe. His silliness saves her from her seriousness. Their love is not balanced. It's gravitational. One pulls, the other orbits, and somehow the motion keeps them both alive. They crash often, but always return. Because underneath the arguments, the exhaustion, the chaos, there's an unspoken truth between them. Neither of us works without the other. Richard's love for his children is even more telling. He doesn't know how to teach them rules, how to guide them through the world's complexity, but he loves them with an instinct that defies language. When he looks at Gumball, Darwin, or Anais, there's no hierarchy, no judgment. He doesn't love them for their achievements or their potential. He loves them because they exist. That's enough. His love is the most radical kind. Unconditional to the point of absurdity. The kids could destroy the house, wreck the car, or bring chaos to Elmore itself, and Richard's first instinct would still be to hug them. His love doesn't wait for behavior to improve. It just keeps giving. To some, that might look like irresponsibility, like he's enabling chaos by not setting boundaries. But that's not what's happening. What Richard is doing, unconsciously, is showing his kids that love doesn't need to be earned. That they don't have to become perfect to deserve it. In a world where worth is measured by success, his love is rebellion. It tells them, you are enough, even when you fail. And that message, coming from a man who fails daily and still laughs, is the purest kind of wisdom. Richard's love is tactile. It's hugs and shared meals and goofy jokes. He doesn't know how to express feelings in words, so he translates them into action, usually messy, often misguided, but always sincere. He'll ruin a dinner trying to surprise Nicole, build something that collapses instantly, or create chaos in the name of joy. It's never about the result. It's about the gesture. He doesn't know how to separate love from participation. To him, loving means being there, even if there is a disaster. And that's the quiet brilliance of Richard's character. His love doesn't need to make sense. It's not smart love. It's not planned. It's just real. It doesn't evolve through insight. It simply persists. That persistence gives it weight. Because love that never falters, even when it should, starts to resemble gravity. It pulls people back home, even when they try to leave. His family might get frustrated with him, might call him useless or irresponsible, but when things fall apart, they always end up near him. They sit beside him, rest their heads on him, laugh with him. His love doesn't fix, it anchors. That's what makes Richard's philosophy of love different from everyone else's. It isn't about solving anything. It's about existing with everything. He doesn't try to perfect love or intellectualize it. He just holds it, even when it's messy, even when it hurts. He knows instinctively that love isn't supposed to make life easier. It's supposed to make life possible. That's why even when Nicole's anger burns, when the kids get lost in their own worlds, Richard stays. He doesn't withdraw. He absorbs. His love is endurance disguised as foolishness. But love, especially love this unconditional, has a shadow. When you give everything, you forget yourself. Richard rarely thinks about his own needs because his love doesn't include self-preservation. He doesn't know how to say no or enough. He doesn't protect himself from hurt. He just lets it flow through him. Like a wave he's too gentle to resist. That's why he seems so invincible. Because he's too open to break. Pain moves through him the way light moves through water. It distorts, but it never lingers. He's mastered the art of emotional transparency without even realizing it. Still, there are moments, brief, flickering, when you can see the toll it takes. When Nicole says something sharp, when the kids laugh at his expense, something behind his eyes dims. It's the smallest thing. A split-second falter before the smile returns. Most never notice it, but it's there. It's the exhaustion of being everyone's comfort while never being anyone's refuge. Richard gives warmth constantly, but no one quite knows how to return it. His love is a current that only flows outward, and yet he never complains. Because for him, giving love is the reward. He doesn't love to be loved. He loves because it's who he is. That purity is what makes his love so misunderstood. The world equates love with wisdom, with choice and restraint and boundaries. Richard's love breaks those rules. It's messy, unguarded, reckless, but that recklessness is precisely what makes it sacred. He loves the way a child does, fully, immediately, without caution. It's the kind of love that can't be manufactured, only remembered. It reminds his family of what they've lost, that first, innocent affection that doesn't measure or expect. His love becomes their mirror, showing them how far they've drifted from simplicity. Sometimes that reflection hurts. Nicole sees in his unconditional acceptance a softness she's long buried beneath responsibility. Gumball sees the version of himself he's still afraid to become. Someone who loves without needing control. Anais sees contradiction. Darwin sees truth. Richard doesn't intend to teach them anything, but he does. Because love, when pure, always teaches. It holds up a mirror not to perfection, but to humanity. There's a strange holiness to Richard's love. It's not divine in the way religion describes it. It's divine in its ordinariness. In the spilled cereal, in the broken dishes, in the loud laughter that fills the kitchen after a mistake. He creates sacredness out of failure. His love doesn't lift people above the mess. It invites them to find peace inside it. It says, you don't have to be good to be loved. You just have to be real. That truth, hidden beneath his clumsiness, is the emotional spine of the entire Watterson family. But what makes Richard's love truly profound is that it doesn't end where others would. It doesn't stop when it's ignored or rejected. He keeps loving through disappointment, through misunderstanding, through fatigue. That endlessness makes his love gravitational. It pulls others back whether they want it or not. Nicole, in her exhaustion, still returns to his warmth. Gumball, in his chaos, still runs toward his father's arms. Darwin still seeks his reassurance. Even Aeneas, the rational one, finds comfort in his presence. Richard's love doesn't demand recognition. It simply exists, patient as the sky. And maybe that's what makes him, unknowingly, the moral compass of the family. Not because he's wise, but because he's kind. He doesn't know how to explain morality or ethics or philosophy, but he feels what's right. His heart moves before his mind. And that heart, unguarded, ridiculous, overflowing, keeps everyone else from losing theirs. His love, though heavy, keeps the world from floating apart. At the end of the day, when the house finally quiets and the chaos fades, Richard will often sit alone, maybe on the couch, maybe in the kitchen, maybe by the glowing fridge light, and just smile. He doesn't need a reason. He thinks of his family, of the noise they make, of the strange and beautiful absurdity of being alive together. He feels that familiar pull in his chest, the gravity of love, and it anchors him. The world outside might be confusing, cruel, or nonsensical, but here, in this tiny orbit of laughter and mistakes, he is home. And for Richard Watterson, home isn't a place. It's a feeling, one made entirely of love that never needed to be earned. Failure, for Richard Watterson, is not a singular event. It's the air he breathes, the quiet hum beneath his laughter, the rhythm of his everyday. The world has labelled him with it so often that it no longer feels like an accusation. It feels like identity. Lazy, foolish, useless, hopeless, words that were meant to shame him have become part of his vocabulary, not because he believes them, but because he's learned how to live beyond them. Failure doesn't break him because he stopped seeing it as something wrong. For Richard, failure is not the end of meaning, it's the beginning of acceptance. Most people fear failure because they think it erases their worth. Richard disproves that every day just by existing. He fails constantly, gloriously, hilariously, completely. And yet, he never stops loving, never stops trying, never stops being himself. His philosophy of failure is simple. If you fall and the world doesn't end, then maybe falling isn't so bad. He's made peace with imperfection to a degree that borders on enlightenment. In a world obsessed with getting things right, Richard has mastered the art of being wrong without losing his joy. That's not stupidity. That's liberation. The myth of failure is that it means something about who you are. Richard has never believed that. He forgets, ruins, misunderstands, but he never connects those moments to identity. He doesn't think, I am a failure. He thinks, that didn't work. Oh well. It's the oh well that makes him free. He doesn't carry shame. He releases it instantly. That's what confuses everyone around him. Nicole works tirelessly to avoid mistakes. Anais plans everything. Gumball worries himself into loops. And then there's Richard, the man who drops the metaphorical plate and says, who needs plates anyway? His lack of attachment to success makes him untouchable in a way the others can't comprehend. This doesn't mean he's immune to hurt. Deep down, Richard knows he disappoints the people he loves. He sees it in Nicole's sighs, in Aeneas's frustration, in Gumball's impatience. But instead of letting that guilt destroy him, he transforms it into love. He doubles down on kindness, on silliness, on warmth. It's his way of saying, I can't be perfect, but I can be here. And that's what makes his philosophy of failure so powerful. It doesn't deny responsibility. It redefines it. For Richard, the point of life isn't to avoid breaking things. It's to keep laughing as you glue them back together. The world around him often mistakes this for ignorance. They assume he doesn't understand the consequences of his actions, that he's too simple to notice the damage. But that's not true. Richard notices. He just forgives faster than others can judge. His mind doesn't dwell. His heart doesn't hold grudges. That's why he can exist in constant imperfection without collapsing. He's mastered emotional gravity, the ability to let things fall and still stand in the wreckage, smiling. In a way, Richard embodies the antidote to modern anxiety. He's the living rejection of the idea that productivity equals purpose. He's unambitious, but not empty. He has no goals, yet somehow his life is full. His failures don't define him because he doesn't live by definitions. He lives by feeling. And the feeling that guides him most, love, contentment, curiosity, never depends on external validation. He doesn't need to win to feel alive. He just needs breakfast. It's easy to laugh at that, but underneath it lies something profound. Failure loses its power the moment you stop believing it separates you from joy. Richard embodies that truth every time he shrugs off a mistake. To him, errors are proof of existence. If you're failing, it means you're alive enough to try. That's why he doesn't fear looking foolish. His entire life is performance art about the beauty of imperfection. His clumsiness becomes a form of spiritual expression, an honest acknowledgement that the world is too complicated to ever be fully mastered. And that's okay. Nicole doesn't always see it that way. To her, failure feels personal, a mark against her effort, her control, her love. When she looks at Richard, she sees the reflection of everything she fears in herself. The possibility of losing control, of not being enough. That's why she gets angry. Not because he fails, but because he doesn't mind. His peace infuriates her because it challenges the entire foundation of her perfectionism. Yet, in the deepest layer of their marriage, that difference is exactly what keeps them together. Richard reminds Nicole that failure doesn't destroy love, it tests it. And every time she forgives him, she becomes softer. He teaches her without teaching that love isn't about performance. It's about persistence. Richard's relationship with his children carries the same lesson. Gumball, who lives in a state of perpetual insecurity and overconfidence, often sees his father as a warning sign, a what not to be. But in his quieter moments, Gumball envies him. He envies the freedom of someone who doesn't fear failure. Darwin, ever empathetic, understands it better. He sees the humility in Richard's simplicity, the ability to admit mistakes without shame. And Anais, for all her brilliance, studies him like a paradox she can't solve. She wants to understand how someone so careless can still be so loved. The answer, though, isn't logic. It's forgiveness. Richard's secret is that he forgives himself faster than anyone else can. That's what makes his presence so healing. He doesn't need to give advice or fix problems. Just being near him reminds people that failure isn't fatal. He normalizes it by embodying it. He makes everyone else's mistakes feel smaller just by existing. In that way, he's almost saint-like, a patron of broken things. He blesses every imperfection he touches by not pretending it should be anything else. When the world breaks around him, he doesn't try to restore order. He simply adapts. He laughs, he eats, he hugs, and somehow life keeps moving. There's a quiet scene, imagined but true in essence, where Richard sits among the ruins of another domestic disaster. The kitchen's a mess. Smoke curls from the oven. Nicole's gone upstairs in exasperation. He looks around, sighs once, then chuckles. "Guess we're having cereal again," he says, and just like that, the crisis ends. That's his power. He doesn't fix problems. He ends their tyranny. He reminds everyone that failure only hurts as long as you believe it's final. Richard's approach to failure is inseparable from his humility. He doesn't need to be right, to win arguments, to prove anything. His ego is too soft to hold grudges. That softness, often mistaken for weakness, is actually resilience. It allows him to bend instead of break, to absorb life's blows without becoming hardened by them. His failures don't scar him. They shape him gently, like waves smoothing a stone. That's why he never grows cynical. The world can mock him endlessly, but he'll still laugh tomorrow. He's immune to shame because he's too kind to himself to believe in it. It's strange how many people think that kind of gentleness is stupidity, but that's the myth. That intelligence requires judgment, that wisdom requires control. Richard's wisdom is of a different kind. It's not the kind that plans ahead or solves equations. It's the kind that looks at a broken thing and still finds it beautiful. His entire existence is a love letter to imperfection. Every spilled drink, every forgotten task, every botched plan is a reminder that life doesn't owe us neatness. It only offers us moments, and we can choose to laugh through them or not. At night, when everyone else has gone quiet, Richard sometimes revisits his memories, not consciously, but in fragments. A day he disappointed Nicole, a time he made the kids cry by accident, a moment when his kindness wasn't enough to fix the chaos he caused. The memories flicker like lights in fog, and for a heartbeat, he feels the ache of them. But then, as always, he sighs, turns over, and falls asleep. He doesn't linger on regret. His mercy for himself is infinite. And maybe that's his greatest strength, the refusal to let guilt harden into identity. Richard Watterson's life is one long string of failures that somehow adds up to love. And that's the paradox. Failure in his world isn't the opposite of success. It's the foundation of connection. It's the place where everyone else's perfection cracks enough to let empathy in. By failing so openly, so consistently, Richard gives everyone permission to stop pretending. He makes life lighter simply by being the one who never hides his mistakes. In that sense, he's not a fool at all. He's a philosopher who discovered something most people never do. That failure doesn't need fixing. It needs forgiving. That imperfection isn't the flaw in the design, it is the design. The myth of failure dies quietly in his presence, replaced by something more honest. The realization that life's beauty comes not from how often we win, but how gently we lose. And in that gentleness, in that endless, forgiving shrug at the universe, Richard finds peace. Not because everything is fine, but because he knows it doesn't have to be. For most people, understanding is a sound, the moment when everything clicks, when a thought forms cleanly, and certainty speaks its name. But for Richard Watterson, understanding has no words. It lives in silence, in the space between thoughts, in the gaps between laughter, in the pauses that stretch just a second too long before he says something absurd again. People mistake that silence for emptiness, for confusion, but sometimes, if you look closely, you can see that he does understand. He just doesn't know how to say it. His silence isn't ignorance, it's reverence. Richard's mind doesn't work in straight lines. It moves like clouds. Slow, shapeless, but always drifting towards something honest. He doesn't think in logic. He feels in truths. His understanding of the world is emotional, not intellectual. He reads people the way a child reads weather, through tone, through rhythm, through the energy of a room. When Nicole sighs after a long day, he doesn't analyze it. He just knows she needs quiet. When Gumball's voice shakes with frustration, he doesn't lecture. He hugs him without asking why. When Anais retreats into her thoughts, he doesn't pry. He waits. His understanding lives in patience, not words. There's a quiet scene that happens again and again throughout Richard's life. The family is arguing or exhausted or lost in their own little storms. He doesn't interrupt. He just sits there, hands folded on his stomach, eyes soft, breathing slow. Everyone mistakes it for indifference. But inside that stillness is a kind of empathy too wide for language. He doesn't need to understand what's being said to understand what's being felt. His silence absorbs everything. He becomes the empty space that lets the noise echo safely. It's strange how rarely people recognize that as intelligence. The world values fast talkers, quick thinkers, problem solvers. But Richard's wisdom is quieter. It doesn't show up in arguments or plans. It lives in the way he listens. Or rather, the way he receives. He doesn't just listen to people, he lets them exist near him without demand. He never forces resolution. That's why, around him, even the loudest chaos eventually softens. He doesn't fix, he forgives. And in that forgiveness, people find their own clarity. Richard's silence has a gravity to it. It pulls confession from those who don't even realize they're speaking. Gumball, for all his noise, often ends up talking to his dad when he doesn't mean to, mumbling fears about school or friends or life. Darwin sits beside him when something feels wrong, trusting the quiet more than advice. Even Nicole, when she's too tired to yell, will sit near him in silence. It frustrates her that he doesn't say anything, but somehow she leaves calmer. That's because Richard's presence does the talking. His stillness tells her what words can't. You're safe here. You don't have to carry it all alone. But silence isn't always peaceful. Sometimes it's heavy, almost unbearable. Richard's understanding comes at a cost, the realization that no matter how much he loves, there are things he can never fix. He knows deep down that he's not the kind of man who changes the world. He doesn't build, invent, or command. His gifts are invisible, intangible, easy to overlook. And so, in quiet moments, he feels the ache of that invisibility. When Nicole's ambition outpaces her joy. When his children outgrow his simplicity. Richard feels himself fading. His silence, once comforting, becomes distance. There's a look he gives when he realizes he's not being heard. It's small, a flicker in the eyes, a half smile that doesn't reach his cheeks. It says, "I know I don't make sense to you, but I still love you anyway." That's the silence of understanding in its purest form. Knowing you don't belong in the conversation, but choosing to stay present anyway. He doesn't fight to be understood. He offers understanding instead. That trade, self-expression for empathy, is the quiet tragedy of his existence. And yet, there's grace in that kind of surrender. Richard's silence is not the absence of voice, it's the acceptance that not everything needs to be said. He's made peace with ambiguity. Where Nicole and Aeneas chase answers, Richard finds comfort in not knowing. For him, mystery is not a threat. It's a kind of softness the world forgot how to touch. He doesn't need to know why things happen. He just needs to know that they do, and that he's still here to feel them. In this way, Richard's silence becomes a kind of spiritual practice. It's not meditation, it's instinct. The universe of Elmore bends and breaks around him. Logic twists, time collapses, reality forgets itself. But he never panics. He just stares, blinks once, maybe laughs, and goes back to eating. It's absurd, yes, but also profound. His silence isn't ignorance, it's trust. A deep, almost cosmic trust that everything, even the nonsense, belongs. That there's no need to fight what you don't understand, because understanding is overrated compared to love. That's why his silence is so powerful. It's not passive, it's active compassion. When others speak, he listens without agenda. When others hurt, he absorbs without demand. His silence holds space for imperfection. He's not waiting for the world to make sense. He's waiting for it to breathe. That's what makes him so vital to his family. He doesn't add pressure. He removes it. In a house full of noise, Nicole's determination, Gumball's chaos, Aeneas's intellect, Darwin's tenderness, Richard is the pause that makes all that life bearable. Still, that understanding isolates him. Few people ask what he feels. They assume that silence means simplicity, that stillness means emptiness. But inside that quiet is a whole weather system of feeling, unspoken, unmeasured, unshared. Richard feels everything too deeply to translate it into words. When the kids get hurt, it cuts through him. When Nicole's eyes fill with exhaustion, it breaks him. But he doesn't cry. He doesn't speak. He just holds it inside until the weight becomes too much. And then, suddenly, he'll laugh, or eat, or nap, as if his body found the only release valve it knows. His silence leaks through humor. That's how he survives. Sometimes, when the night grows long and the world outside their window falls quiet, Richard will sit up and listen to the house breathe. The hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of the clock, the faint, distant rhythm of everyone else's sleep. He listens not because he's curious, but because the sound of peace comforts him. It tells him he did something right, that despite the day's mistakes, the chaos, the misunderstandings, his family is safe, dreaming, alive. He doesn't need a thank you. The silence of their rest is enough. It's his reward. Richard's understanding isn't something he learned. It's something he remembered. It's the primal wisdom that life doesn't need explanation. That love doesn't need perfection. That silence, if held gently enough, can heal more than any words. It's the kind of wisdom most people unlearn as they grow older, buried beneath anxiety and ambition. But Richard somehow never forgot it. His simplicity preserved a truth everyone else complicated away. That peace is not found in knowing everything, but in needing to know nothing. There's a story the world tells that to be wise is to speak well, but Richard's life tells another. That sometimes the truest wisdom is the ability to stay quiet in the presence of mystery. His silence doesn't demand, doesn't explain, doesn't control. It accepts. It listens. It forgives. And in that forgiveness, it understands more than words ever could. In the end, maybe Richard Watterson doesn't need to be understood at all. Maybe he exists to remind everyone else that understanding isn't the goal. Connection is. That the world doesn't need more explanations. It needs more patience. His silence, so often mistaken for emptiness, might just be the sound of love listening. And when the night finally settles and the house is completely still, Richard closes his eyes and smiles. He doesn't think about tomorrow or about the things left unsaid. He just listens to the silence one last time, the soft hum of life continuing, the gentle proof that everything is okay for now. And in that quiet, unspoken understanding, he drifts into sleep. Joy is supposed to be simple, the easy part of life, the bright counterpoint to struggle. But for Richard Watterson, joy is fragile, a delicate thing that shivers even as it shines. It comes quickly, loudly, completely, but it never stays for long. It flickers in his laughter, in the sparkle of his eyes when he sees his family happy, in the first bite of breakfast on a slow morning. But beneath that brightness is a strange awareness, an almost childlike understanding that joy, by its very nature, doesn't last. It's too soft, too pure, too unguarded to survive for long in a world as chaotic as his. And maybe that's why he holds onto it so tightly. He knows it's fleeting, and that makes it sacred. Richard's joy has always been misunderstood. People think it's obliviousness, that he's too simple to see the sadness in things. But the truth is the opposite. He sees it too clearly. He laughs not because he doesn't know the world is painful, but because he does. His joy is a form of resistance, a small, daily act of rebellion against the heaviness that threatens to crush everything beautiful. In that way, Richard's joy is both strength and surrender. He doesn't fight the darkness. He illuminates it for as long as he can, knowing the light will fade and that he'll have to relight it again tomorrow. There's a kind of ritual in the way he approaches happiness. Every morning, he greets the world like a child seeing it for the first time. The smell of breakfast, the sound of the TV, the warmth of the couch. Each detail becomes a reason to smile. To others, it looks like laziness or denial. But for Richard, these are acts of preservation. He's building joy out of the smallest pieces available, constructing meaning from crumbs. He knows that joy doesn't arrive fully formed. It has to be built over and over again, out of ordinary moments that no one else bothers to notice. The fragility of Richard's joy comes from how deeply he feels everything. His emotions aren't layered or filtered. They move straight from the world into his heart. When something hurts, he breaks completely. When something delights him, he shines like the sun. That purity makes him vulnerable, but it also makes his happiness real. There's no performance in it, no irony, just the raw, unedited experience of being alive. And that's why his laughter, even when it's ridiculous, feels different, because it's honest. Because it comes from a place untouched by bitterness. Still, fragility means that his joy is easily wounded. Nicole's harsh words, the kid's frustrations, the constant reminder that he's seen as foolish, all of it chips away at his light. He never argues back, never defends himself. He just goes quiet for a moment, as if something inside him has cracked. But then, as always, he recovers. He laughs again, louder this time. The laughter covers the fracture but doesn't heal it. The truth is, Richard gets hurt more often than anyone realizes. It's just that his joy refuses to stay broken. It keeps stitching itself back together, thread by thread, smile by smile. Joy, for Richard, isn't the absence of pain. It's the decision to live beside it. He doesn't wait for perfect moments. He creates them in the middle of the mess. When the house collapses into chaos, when Nicole's patience evaporates, when the kids argue, Richard finds something, anything, to love about the moment. A sound, a smell, a memory. He focuses on that tiny flicker until it becomes light again. It's instinct, not strategy. He doesn't plan joy. He just refuses to let it die. There's a strange kind of wisdom in that. Most people chase happiness as if it's a permanent state, something to achieve and maintain. Richard knows better. He understands, deep down, that joy isn't something you hold. It's something you touch briefly before it moves on. Trying to trap it only breaks it. That's why he never tries to control his happiness. He lets it come and go as it pleases, trusting that it will return when it's ready. It always does. His laughter is not the sound of ignorance. It's the sound of someone who has made peace with impermanence. The world often laughs at Richard, but it also laughs through him. His joy is contagious because it's not self-centered. He doesn't laugh to be seen, he laughs to share. When he's happy, he wants everyone to join him. That's why even the most frustrating moments in the Watterson household somehow turn into communal laughter. It's as if his joy carries a gravitational pull of its own, drawing others toward him until they forget why they were angry. His happiness doesn't erase pain. It transforms it into something bearable, something even beautiful. And yet, joy's fragility never fully leaves him. It's always there, in the quiet moments, waiting to shatter. There are times when Richard's smile wavers, when the laughter fades and his eyes drift somewhere distant. He thinks about the things he can't fix, the people he's disappointed, the future he'll never quite catch up to. Those thoughts don't last long, but they leave traces, faint cracks beneath the brightness. The sadness doesn't define him, but it deepens him. It gives his joy weight, because joy without sorrow is weightless, and Richard, for all his foolishness, is grounded. One of the reasons his joy feels so fragile is because it depends entirely on connection. Richard doesn't know how to be happy alone. His joy is relational. It exists in laughter shared, food shared, life shared. That's why he fears silence and solitude. It's not laziness that keeps him close to others. It's longing. He needs the presence of love to feel whole. Without it, joy becomes too light, too brittle to survive. He doesn't seek pleasure for himself. He seeks joy that includes everyone. That inclusivity is what makes his happiness sacred. It's never selfish. There's a scene that repeats in spirit throughout his life. The family sits together, exhausted after another day of nonsense. The house is a mess, the plans are ruined, the night has gone wrong, and yet, somehow, Richard starts laughing. At first, no one joins. Nicole sighs, the kids groan, but he keeps laughing, gently, persistently, until the sound catches on. Slowly, the others give in. The laughter spreads, echoing through the wreckage of the day. Nothing has been fixed, but everything feels lighter. That's Richard's quiet gift, the ability to turn exhaustion into tenderness, to find joy at the very edge of collapse. In moments like that, you see the truth of his philosophy. Joy isn't about control, it's about surrender. It's not something you earn, it's something you allow. Richard allows it completely without fear of losing it, because he knows he will lose it, and that knowledge is what makes it so precious. His joy is not denial of impermanence, it's devotion to it. He finds holiness in the temporary, divinity in the ridiculous. Every laugh is a prayer, every smile a thank you, whispered to a universe that keeps resetting itself. What makes Richard's joy truly fragile and truly beautiful is how honestly it breaks. When he cries, which is rare, it's silent and short-lived. The tears fall, the breath catches, and then the smile returns. Not because the pain is gone, but because he's forgiven it. Forgiveness is the core of his joy. Forgiveness of himself, of others, of life itself, for being so imperfect. That's what keeps his heart from hardening. He refuses to let bitterness take root. His fragility becomes his strength. His vulnerability, his shield. Nicole once told him, half in frustration and half in awe, "You don't take anything seriously." She meant it as criticism, but she was wrong. Richard takes everything seriously. He just refuses to give pain the final word. To him, seriousness doesn't mean sorrow. It means love. It means showing up again and again, no matter how many times things fall apart. His joy may be fragile, but it's also persistent. It breaks every day and still returns, softer, wiser, brighter. At the end of a long day, when the house quiets and the stars lean against the window, Richard sometimes sits in the dark, eyes half closed, a faint smile still on his face. He thinks about nothing in particular. The warmth of the couch, the hum of the refrigerator, the echo of laughter that still lingers in the air. He feels a tenderness rise inside him, too vast to name. It's joy. Small, cracked, but alive. It's enough. And in that fragile, fleeting happiness, he finds peace. Because maybe joy isn't supposed to last. Maybe it's supposed to pass through us like light through glass, leaving warmth for a moment before moving on. Richard doesn't chase it. He lets it come, he lets it go, and he laughs each time it returns, grateful, surprised, alive. In that cycle of breaking and mending, of sorrow and laughter, he lives the truest kind of joy. The kind that knows it can end, and loves anyway. Richard Watterson is always hungry. It's the first thing people notice about him. The way he devours life, the way food seems to orbit him like planets around a star. His appetite is endless, absurd, and somehow beautiful. But beneath the comedy of it, beneath the stacks of pancakes and mountains of donuts, there's something deeper happening. His hunger isn't just physical, it's spiritual. It's the hunger for meaning. The endless craving to feel full in a world that never quite satisfies. He doesn't know that's what he's searching for. He just feels it. That quiet ache that sits between laughter and silence. It's the same hunger that makes him eat, talk, laugh, love, all with the same boundless energy. He's trying to fill something that can't be filled, not because he's empty, but because he feels too much. The world pours into him faster than he can hold it. His hunger isn't greed. It's gratitude so large it becomes need. Every bite, every laugh, every hug is his way of saying, I'm still here, I'm still tasting life. The hunger for meaning is different from curiosity. Richard doesn't seek answers. He seeks feeling. He doesn't want to understand the world. He wants to experience it. He wants to taste its sweetness, even when it makes no sense. That's why he never questions the absurdities of Elmore. He doesn't care why a talking balloon can fall in love, or how time resets, or why logic dissolves. Meaning, for him, is not found in explanation. It's found in experience. And so, he eats the world whole. But hunger has a shadow. The more you consume, the more you realize how insatiable you are. For all his laughter, Richard's appetite carries melancholy. There's a sadness in constant wanting, in the realization that fullness never lasts. Every meal ends, every joke fades, every moment slips away. He feels it, even if he can't name it. That faint, lingering sadness after joy, that's hunger. The ache that follows satisfaction. The quiet whisper that says, more. The tragedy is that Richard's hunger is mistaken for foolishness. People see him eating, napping, laughing, and they assume he's simple, that he's avoiding life's deeper questions. But what if that's not true? What if, in his own way, he's confronting the deepest question of all? What does it mean to be alive in a world that never stays still? Richard's answer is instinctual. You don't find meaning. You absorb it. You take it into yourself until it becomes part of you, even if it never lasts. His hunger for meaning shows most clearly in how he loves. When Richard hugs someone, it's not casual, it's desperate, even holy. He's trying to hold the world long enough to feel it stop spinning. Every embrace is a small act of survival. He loves hard, because love is the only thing that fills him for longer than a meal. It's the only thing that doesn't fade on contact. When Nicole smiles at him, truly smiles, not out of pity or exasperation, but out of genuine affection, you can see something shift in him. For a moment he's full, not with food, not with noise, but with meaning. And yet, he knows that moment won't last. The hunger always returns. That's the curse and the gift of someone like Richard. He feels the endlessness of desire, but he never lets it destroy him. He doesn't resent it. He befriends it. His appetite becomes his way of worshipping life. Each meal, each laugh, each failure is another prayer whispered to the universe. Thank you for giving me more to want. There's a kind of humility in that. Most people try to conquer their hunger, to satisfy it, control it, outgrow it. Richard doesn't. He accepts it as part of being human. He doesn't see hunger as a flaw, he sees it as proof that he's alive. Even when it gets him into trouble, even when it leads him to excess, there's something profoundly innocent about it. He's not trying to escape life's emptiness. He's trying to taste it, to find sweetness in it. The deeper irony is that his hunger keeps him grounded. It's the thing that keeps him connected to the world's physicality. While everyone else gets lost in their thoughts, in expectations and anxieties, Richard remains tethered to sensation. He smells, he tastes, he touches, he experiences reality through its simplest languages. His search for meaning isn't philosophical, it's tactile. The crunch of toast, the softness of a hug, the warmth of the morning light, these are his scriptures. To him, meaning doesn't live in words, it lives in the act of noticing. But hunger, even sacred hunger, can turn lonely. Richard doesn't always know how to share it. His family loves him, but they don't understand the vastness of what he feels. Nicole sees appetite as chaos, Anais as waste, Gumball as comedy. None of them quite realize that for Richard, eating is not escape. It's communion. Every bite connects him to the world, to time, to memory. It's his way of holding on to moments that keep slipping away. Each taste is a memory he doesn't want to forget. Each meal is an attempt to stop time, and yet, even as he eats, he knows it's temporary. The hunger always returns, gentle but persistent, like the tide. That's why he never grows bitter. He doesn't expect satisfaction to last. He doesn't cling to fullness the way others do. He savors it, then lets it go. In this, he's wiser than he appears. He knows that nothing in life can truly be held. Not food, not love, not joy. and that the beauty of life comes from that very impermanence. The hunger reminds him to keep living. The world keeps telling him to grow up, to get serious, to stop indulging his appetites. But what if those appetites are what make him most human? Richard's hunger isn't greed, it's empathy. It's the same hunger that makes him want to feed others, to comfort, to make people laugh. He doesn't just want to consume, he wants to share. His joy multiplies when others taste it too. His love deepens when it's reflected. That's why his family, despite all the chaos he brings, can never stay mad for long. His hunger makes them feel alive too. Sometimes though, when the noise fades and the dishes are empty, Richard feels the ache of it, the hollow that follows fullness. He sits quietly, hands on his belly, staring into the dim light of the kitchen. He isn't sad, not exactly. It's more like wonder. The awareness of how fleeting everything is. He thinks, without thinking, it's already over again. But even in that thought, there's peace, because the hunger will return, and with it, life. Richard's search for meaning, then, is not about finding something that lasts. It's about learning to love the cycle, emptiness and fullness, hunger and satisfaction, joy and sorrow. He doesn't cling to one or fear the other. He moves through both like waves. His appetite becomes his rhythm, his philosophy. It tells him that nothing stays, and that's okay. That the point isn't to be full forever, but to keep tasting, to keep trying, to keep loving in every direction. In this way, Richard's hunger mirrors the human condition. We're all searching for something to fill us, something to make sense of the absurd, to give weight to our days. Most of us chase it through achievement, ambition, distraction. Richard chases it through breakfast, through laughter, through the simple, relentless act of being. His hunger teaches us that meaning isn't a destination, it's an appetite. It's the willingness to keep reaching, even when you know you'll never grasp everything. At the end of the day, when the house is quiet and the fridge hums like a lullaby, Richard opens it one last time. He doesn't need food, he just likes the light. He stands there, bathed in its soft glow, and smiles. The hunger is still there, patient and familiar. It doesn't bother him anymore. It feels like an old friend, one that will follow him forever. Through laughter, through sleep, through every absurd day still to come. He closes the door, lies down, and sighs, full and empty at once. And in that moment, the hunger for meaning becomes meaning itself. Not something to escape, but something to live with. A heartbeat, a rhythm, a reminder that to want is to be alive. Richard doesn't need the answer. He only needs the next moment. And when it arrives, he will smile and laugh and eat and love, hungry again, grateful again, whole again, if only for a while. Lee. Memory has a strange way of clinging to the quietest moments. Not the big ones, not the dramatic scenes or the shouting matches or even the laughter that shakes the walls, but the small ones. The ones that pass unnoticed. The sound of a cereal box opening, the warmth of sunlight on a couch cushion, the echo of someone humming while the rest of the house sleeps. For Richard Watterson, those are the memories that linger. His life is a collage of softness, fragments of feeling stitched together by love and forgetfulness in equal measure. He forgets so much. The world around him moves too fast, too bright, too loud. Days blur into each other like wet paint. Nicole remembers everything. The bills, the chores, the deadlines. Richard remembers sensations. The smell of pancakes in the morning. The laughter of his kids bouncing through the hallway. The way Nicole's voice softens when she says his name in a rare moment of tenderness. His memory isn't chronological, it's emotional. He doesn't store time, he stores love. That's what makes his relationship with memory so beautiful and so tragic. He forgets the details, but he never forgets the warmth. He can't recall what day something happened, but he remembers how it felt. He remembers the shape of joy, even if he can't explain where it came from. In that way, his memory is pure. It's unburdened by regret, untouched by analysis. He doesn't replay mistakes the way others do. When something breaks, he feels the pain, then lets it go. The echo of the hurt fades quickly. Only love stays. Nicole doesn't understand this. For her, memory is both map and anchor. She uses it to navigate, to make sense of the past, to avoid future mistakes. But Richard doesn't want to navigate life. He just wants to live it. When she brings up something he forgot, a missed errand, a lost appointment, an anniversary he can't quite place, he looks guilty for a moment, then smiles sheepishly. He isn't dismissive, he's just unbound. His world isn't built on memory the way hers is. It's built on presence. To him, the past is like a warm light that never quite goes out. Not something to revisit, just something to sit beside. Still, there are memories that even he can't let go of. They surface quietly, like bubbles from deep water, at unexpected times. A childhood moment, his mother's laughter, the smell of grass after rain, a time he saw Nicole cry and didn't know how to comfort her. The first time he held Gumball and felt the weight of fatherhood without understanding what it meant. These moments stay with him not as stories, but as sensations. They haunt him softly, shaping who he is without him realizing it. There's one memory, perhaps the truest in his heart, that he returns to without knowing why. It isn't extraordinary, just a morning long ago. The sun through the kitchen window, the kids laughing, Nicole standing by the stove, tired but smiling. Richard sitting at the table, watching them, feeling a stillness he didn't know how to name. For that one brief moment, everything felt right. Not perfect, but aligned. He didn't think to remember it at the time, but the feeling stayed. And now, whenever life spins too fast, he chases it unconsciously. That echo of peace, of wholeness, of being exactly where he was meant to be. Memory, for Richard, is not about holding on. It's about returning. He doesn't remember to analyze. He remembers to feel. The past is not something behind him. It's something that keeps moving through him, reshaping how he laughs, how he loves, how he forgives. When he forgets something painful, it's not neglect, it's mercy. He refuses to let yesterday's hurt poison today's light. His forgetfulness, so often seen as flaw, is actually a form of emotional wisdom. It's how he keeps his heart open. But sometimes, memory hurts even him. There are moments he doesn't speak about. The times he disappointed Nicole, the times his carelessness hurt the kids, the times his laughter came too soon or too loud and made someone else's pain worse. He doesn't dwell on them, but they linger in small ways. A quiet pause before a joke, a hesitation before a smile. Those are his scars, not visible, but there. Memory doesn't punish him, it humbles him. It reminds him that love is fragile, that carelessness costs, that being kind isn't always enough. Richard's memory works like a mirror with soft edges. It doesn't reflect things as they were, it reflects them as they felt. That's why his recollections are always warmer than the truth. He edits out the cruelty, the embarrassment, the shame, and leaves behind the sweetness. Not because he's delusional, but because he believes in the best version of everything. His memory is a choice, not a fact, but a faith. He chooses to remember life as something worth loving. That choice is what saves him. The world could easily crush someone like Richard, someone so open, so sensitive, so unarmored. But his selective memory protects him. It filters out the noise, leaving only the melody. He doesn't deny pain, he just doesn't give it permanence. To him, memory isn't a storage of proof, it's a sanctuary of feeling. He forgets because he forgives. He forgives because he loves. His family doesn't always see that. To them, his forgetfulness is another burden, another problem to manage. But if they look closer, they'd realize how much of their peace depends on it. Richard's ability to forget keeps their home from drowning in tension. When others hold grudges, he lets go. When arguments linger, he's the first to move on. His memory resets faster than anyone else's. Not because he's simple, but because he values connection more than correctness. He'd rather forget than stay right. He'd rather laugh than win. There's something almost sacred in that. Forgetfulness, in Richard's hands, becomes compassion. It becomes a form of freedom, a refusal to let the past decide who you are. He carries only what his heart can hold, and somehow, that's always enough. His life is lighter for it, and that lightness lifts everyone around him. But even he can't escape nostalgia. There are nights when he lies awake, staring at the ceiling, his mind wandering without aim. He doesn't think in words, just images, flashes of old laughter, faces, colours, half-remembered moments. The kids as toddlers, Nicole in her younger days, the house before it became theirs. These fragments drift through him like stars. They don't make him sad. They make him still. Memory in those moments feels like breathing. Slow, tender, infinite. If there's one thing Richard understands about memory, it's that it's never complete. It's not meant to be. The holes between memories are what give them meaning. The things he forgets make the things he remembers brighter. Without absence, there's no glow. That's why he doesn't fear forgetting. He trusts that what truly matters will find its way back. Not as fact, but as feeling. The heart, he seems to believe, remembers better than the mind ever could. In the strange world of Elmore, where time bends and continuity breaks, Richard's relationship with memory becomes even more poetic. When episodes reset, when events contradict, when the past dissolves and returns in different shapes, he never questions it. He doesn't need the world to stay consistent to love it. His love survives the forgetting. In a universe that erases itself over and over again, Richard is the thread that stays warm. His memory isn't factual continuity, it's emotional continuity. The story may change, but the feeling remains. That's the echo of memory in its truest sense. Not a repetition of what was, but a resonance of what mattered. Richard lives in that echo. He doesn't need to recall the details of every day to know he's loved. He feels it every time Nicole sighs but smiles, every time the kids fall asleep near him, every time the house hums with noise and peace in the same breath. Those sensations are memory enough. And when he closes his eyes at night, drifting between waking and dream, his mind doesn't replay the past in sequence. It drifts through it like water, fragments merging into colour, laughter into light. He sees his family, not as they are or were, but as they feel to him. Soft, glowing, eternal. The echo fades, the silence returns, and he smiles. Because for Richard Watterson, memory isn't something to keep. It's something to relive, gently, endlessly, in every new morning that feels just a little bit like the last one he loved. Forgiveness is supposed to be light. a release, a letting go. But for Richard Watterson, forgiveness carries weight. It's not something he gives once and forgets about. It's something he lives with every day, quietly, in the way he moves through the world. He forgives constantly, endlessly, instinctively. It's in his nature like breathing. But forgiveness, when you give it as easily as he does, starts to accumulate. It settles somewhere deep in the chest. Soft, but heavy. And maybe that's what keeps Richard grounded. The quiet gravity of everything he's ever let go of. He forgives because he can't bear the alternative. The thought of holding on to anger, of letting resentment take root, feels unbearable to him. It's not moral superiority, it's emotional necessity. Richard's heart doesn't have compartments. He can't store bitterness in one corner and love in another. He feels everything all at once, and so he has to keep it clean. Forgiveness becomes the way he keeps his heart livable, for himself, for others, for the world that so often misunderstands him. Most people forgive after understanding. They analyze, reason, make peace with logic. Richard doesn't do that. He forgives before understanding. He doesn't need explanations, apologies, or closure. If you hurt him, he hurts for a moment, then looks at you with those wide, childlike eyes and moves on. It's not that he doesn't feel pain, he feels it deeply, but he refuses to let it define anyone. His forgiveness isn't about forgetting, it's about choosing love even when it doesn't make sense. That's why his family never stays fractured for long. When Nicole yells, when Gumball lies, when Anais withdraws, Richard doesn't retaliate or sulk. He absorbs it. He lets the storm pass through him until it loses power. Then he smiles, offers food, a joke, a hug. That's his form of reconciliation. Simple, wordless, immediate. It's as if he's telling them, I saw the worst of you, and I still love you. You don't need to earn it back. That kind of forgiveness is rare because it's unconditional. It doesn't wait for the other person to deserve it. But there's a shadow in that too. Forgiveness, when constant, can become invisibility. Richard forgives so easily that people stop noticing. His pain goes unacknowledged because he never demands recognition. He doesn't hold grudges, but that also means no one realizes when he's hurt. His softness hides the scars. The family leans on his acceptance the way one leans on air. Invisible, constant, taken for granted. But air still carries weight. It still presses down, quietly, invisibly. That's what forgiveness feels like inside him. The pressure of all the things he's chosen not to hold against anyone. Sometimes, that weight catches up to him. There are moments when the laughter fades, when everyone has gone to bed, when Richard sits alone and the silence feels thick. In those moments, forgiveness stops being effortless. He feels the ache of everything he's ever let go of. Every insult brushed off, every disappointment laughed away. Every time he told himself it didn't matter. It does matter. It all matters. But he forgives again. Not out of habit, but out of love. Because holding on for him feels worse than breaking. Nicole never quite understands how he does it. For her, forgiveness is complicated. It requires thought, apology, repair. But Richard doesn't need those things. He forgives her even when she's still angry. He forgives before she's finished yelling. It frustrates her sometimes, his ability to move on without resolution, but deep down, it's what saves them. Without his softness, their family would shatter under its own intensity. He absorbs what the others can't bear to carry. His forgiveness becomes their second chance, over and over again. The beauty of Richard's forgiveness is that it doesn't erase the past. It transforms it. When he looks at someone who's hurt him, He doesn't see the mistake. He sees the person he loves behind it. That vision of the human beneath the harm is what keeps his world gentle. He doesn't divide people into good and bad, right and wrong. To him, everyone is just trying, and trying, in his eyes, is enough. That's why even his anger, when it appears, dissolves so quickly. He can't stay angry at someone he understands too well. His forgiveness extends beyond people. He forgives life itself. He forgives time for moving too fast, gravity for pulling too hard, existence for being absurd. He forgives the brokenness of the world without pretending it's okay. He just chooses love anyway. That's what makes his simplicity so profound. He doesn't separate the sacred from the mundane. Forgiveness isn't an act for him. It's a state of being. He wakes up forgiving and falls asleep forgiven. Still, his forgiveness comes with loneliness. Because when you expect nothing in return, people stop giving it. Richard rarely hears, "Thank you." He rarely receives the same grace he gives so freely. But he never resents that. He seems to understand, instinctively, that forgiveness isn't a transaction. It's a way of existing. His peace doesn't depend on reciprocity. It depends only on his willingness to let go. That's why nothing can truly break him. The world can take everything from him: pride, success, recognition. But as long as he can forgive, he remains whole. There's a quiet holiness in that kind of endurance. Forgiveness for Richard isn't soft because it avoids conflict. It's soft because it refuses to harden. It's not weakness, it's strength made invisible. It takes courage to keep loving after disappointment, to stay open after being hurt, to remain gentle in a world that rewards sharpness. Richard's forgiveness isn't about morality, it's about survival. He forgives because he knows that bitterness would destroy the joy he's built his life around. He protects his peace the only way he knows how: by giving it away. One of the most tender things about him is that he forgives himself just as easily. He knows he fails constantly. Forgets chores, breaks promises, loses focus, but he doesn't linger on guilt. He sighs, maybe laughs, maybe eats something, and starts over. It's not denial, it's acceptance. He forgives himself because he knows he's trying. And for him, trying is enough. That self-forgiveness is what allows him to keep giving to others. You can't love people if you hate yourself. Richard's self-compassion makes his love sustainable. His children learn this from him, even if they don't realize it. Gumball, in his chaos, sees in his father the permission to fail. Darwin learns that kindness doesn't have to be logical to be powerful. Aeneas, for all her intelligence, eventually understands that forgiveness is a different kind of wisdom, one that can't be measured. Richard teaches them all, simply by existing, that forgiveness is the glue that holds the world together. Without it, everything would crumble. And yet, Richard's forgiveness isn't boundless in the way it might seem. There are limits, not in love, but in capacity. Sometimes the weight gets too heavy. You can see it in the moments when his eyes glaze over, when his smile falters, when he retreats into silence. He forgives again, but each time it takes a little more from him. Still, he never regrets it. The exhaustion of forgiveness to him is better than the poison of resentment. If love costs energy, then so be it. He'll spend himself on it completely. At night, forgiveness becomes his prayer. He lies in bed, listening to the house settle, the faint sounds of his family breathing in other rooms. He thinks about the day, the mistakes, the laughter, the small hurts. He forgives them all. He forgives himself. Then he smiles, not because everything is fixed, but because nothing needs to be. The day is over. Love remains. That's enough. In the morning, when he wakes up, he'll start the cycle again, not because he's forgetful, but because forgiveness is never finished. It's a continuous act of renewal, like breathing, like laughter, like love. He carries its weight gently, as he carries everything, turning it into warmth for others to feel. That's the quiet miracle of Richard Watterson. He lives in a state of perpetual grace, not because the world is kind to him, but because he chooses to be kind to it. His forgiveness is not a weakness. It's a way of saying, I refuse to stop loving you, no matter how many times I'm hurt. That's not foolishness, that's faith. And when the lights go out and the laughter fades and the house is still, Richard's forgiveness lingers in the air, invisible, constant, like gravity. The weight of it is heavy, but it's the kind of weight that holds everything together. Chaos follows Richard Watterson the way light follows a flame, not as an accident, but as proof of existence. Wherever he goes, something breaks, spills, topples, collapses. Order dissolves in his presence, as if the universe itself forgets the rules for a moment. Most people see this as failure, as clumsiness, as the byproduct of carelessness. But for Richard, chaos is not a mistake. It's a language, one he's been speaking his whole life without realizing it. It's how he interacts with the world. It's how he loves it. The world of Elmore is already absurd, a place where logic folds in on itself, where physics bends for laughter, where the line between imagination and reality is as thin as a cartoon outline. In that kind of world, chaos isn't the exception. It's the pulse. And Richard, in his strange, bumbling way, is the rhythm keeper. He's not separate from the chaos. He is the embodiment of its heart. He doesn't fight it or resent it. He dances with it. That's what makes him different from everyone else in his family. Nicole tries to control chaos. Gumball creates it and then regrets it. Anais studies it. Darwin empathizes with it. But Richard simply lives it. To him, chaos isn't destruction, it's aliveness. When things fall apart, he doesn't panic. He laughs. When the plan fails, he shrugs. When the world makes no sense, he joins in. His acceptance of chaos isn't laziness, it's faith. Faith that the world will eventually balance itself, that not every mess needs a mop, that not every mistake needs fixing. His life is a sermon in entropy, the holy art of letting things happen. There's a deep innocence in that. Richard doesn't see chaos as something external. He doesn't blame it on circumstance or other people. He sees it as natural, the way trees shed leaves or waves break on sand. It's not a punishment or a test. It's just the texture of existence. That's why he never seems surprised when things go wrong. He treats misfortune with the same gentle bewilderment he gives to everything else. His chaos doesn't come from ignorance. It comes from surrender. But chaos has layers. On the surface, it's funny. The broken furniture, the spilled food, the wild misunderstandings. Beneath that humor, though, there's something more vulnerable. Richard's chaos often comes from love. He tries too hard to help, to give, to surprise, and ends up unraveling the very thing he meant to fix. The tragedy of his chaos is that it's born from good intentions. He causes trouble because he cares too much, not too little. That's what makes him so deeply human, the way his affection tangles with his mistakes until they become indistinguishable. Nicole often sees his chaos as opposition. She works so hard to create structure, to keep the family from falling apart, that his disorder feels like betrayal. But what she doesn't see, or perhaps refuses to see, is that his chaos keeps her anchored too. Without it, her world would become too rigid, too brittle. He gives her something she doesn't know she needs. imperfection that doesn't apologize. Richard's chaos reminds her that control is not the same as peace. That sometimes, to truly live, you have to let the dishes break. His children, though they roll their eyes at him, understand this instinctively. Gumball especially mirrors his father's dance with disorder. The difference is that Gumball fears chaos when it turns against him. Richard never does. He trusts it. Even when it hurts him, even when it embarrasses him, he believes that somewhere inside the mess, there's meaning. It's an almost mystical belief that every disaster hides a gift. Every broken thing hides beauty. He doesn't say it aloud because he doesn't know how to, but his actions repeat it endlessly. The world doesn't need to be perfect to be good. There's a pattern to the way Richard interacts with chaos. It always starts with love, a gesture, an idea, a hope. Then, inevitably, something goes wrong. The moment collapses into absurdity. Most people would grow bitter after enough of those failures, but not him. He laughs, forgives, and tries again. That's the secret at the heart of his philosophy. Chaos is not something to fear. It's something to live with kindly. The mess never ends, so you might as well learn to make peace with it. That peace is not passive. It's not the peace of resignation, but of trust. Richard trusts the world to rebuild itself. He doesn't rush to fix everything because he believes that everything will eventually find balance. It's an almost cosmic optimism, a belief that even broken things belong. That's why when the family argues, when the walls shake, when life unravels, he rarely panics. He knows the storm will pass. He's lived enough of them to know that chaos is not the end. It's just another season. The beauty of Richard's chaos is that it's creative. Out of every mistake, something new emerges. A laugh, a memory, a story. His disasters become the glue of the family's bond. The moments that drive everyone crazy in the moment are the same ones they remember later with warmth. His chaos turns pain into connection. Without meaning to, he becomes the family's storyteller, weaving humor out of mishap. The world calls it failure. The Wattersons call it dinner conversation. But chaos also isolates him. Because while everyone else laughs or complains, Richard feels the aftermath more deeply than he shows. He sees the exhaustion in Nicole's face, the worry in Anais' eyes, the frustration in Gumball's sigh. He doesn't say anything, but it hurts him. He never intends harm, but harm happens anyway. And so he carries that quiet guilt inside, disguised beneath laughter. Every new mess is another chance to forgive himself. To believe again that love matters more than order. There's a scene, maybe imagined, maybe real, where Richard sits alone in the living room after another catastrophe. The room is wrecked. Food on the floor, broken glass glinting in the lamplight. He sighs, picks up a single piece, turns it over in his hands. For a moment, the laughter's gone. He looks around, sees the evidence of his chaos, and smiles. Small, sad, but sincere. "It's not so bad," he murmurs to no one in particular. Then he hums a little tune and starts cleaning. That's how he redeems himself. Not through apologies, but through persistence. He doesn't fix chaos, he lives through it until it softens. Richard's relationship with chaos reveals something profound about the human condition. We all crave control, but control is an illusion. The world will break no matter how carefully we arrange it. The choice isn't between chaos and order, it's between fear and acceptance. Richard chooses acceptance every time. He doesn't resist life's absurdity, he joins it. That's why he never really suffers, even when things fall apart. He's already made peace with falling. If you watch him closely, you'll notice that his laughter isn't careless. It's precise. It arrives exactly when the tension peaks, as if he can sense the moment before despair would take over and stops it in its tracks. His humor is a pressure valve for chaos, releasing it before it becomes destruction. That's why his family always ends up laughing, even when they shouldn't. He disarms chaos with kindness. He turns disaster into music. There's a strange symmetry to it. The more chaos Richard creates, the more peace he ultimately brings. Not because he resolves the mess, but because he reminds everyone that mess is survivable. He transforms catastrophe into connection by refusing to see it as catastrophe. His lack of panic becomes contagious. In his world, chaos is not an error. It's expression, life in its rawest, most honest form. In a way, Richard's chaos mirrors the structure of the show itself. Cyclical, unpredictable, self-referential. The world resets, but the feeling stays. His mistakes, like Elmore's continuity, never truly disappear. They just reshape themselves into new beginnings. Chaos becomes creation. Destruction becomes rhythm. Every collapse births a new laugh. He is, unknowingly, the architect of that rhythm. At night, when the day's noise has faded, and the house finally stands still, Richard lies in bed with a small, satisfied sigh. He thinks, not in words, but in sensations. The warmth of family, the hum of the world still turning. To anyone else, it might look like peace after exhaustion. To him, it feels like completion. The chaos has done its work. It has tested love, shaken it, scattered it, and left it stronger than before. That's what chaos means to Richard Watterson. Not ruin, but renewal. It's how the world breathes. It breaks itself to stay alive. And he, in his strange, bumbling way, has learned to love the Puritan breaking, to laugh with it, to live inside it. Because maybe the universe doesn't need order to make sense. Maybe it just needs someone kind enough to keep laughing while it falls apart. There's a point at the edge of every thought where words dissolve and only feeling remains. That's where Richard Watterson lives. For him, life has never been about figuring things out. It's about feeling them deeply enough that explanation becomes unnecessary. The world to Richard doesn't need to make sense to be worth loving. Meaning, in his eyes, isn't something you chase. It's something that disappears the moment you try to hold it. And maybe that's why he's always smiling. He's already arrived at the end of meaning. And he's okay with it. Most people spend their lives trying to define purpose, to assign value to everything, to extract lessons from chaos, to turn emotion into philosophy. But Richard isn't most people. He doesn't stand outside life, analysing it. He lives inside it, unfiltered, unguarded, endlessly present. Where others see meaning as a structure to build, he sees it as a moment to notice. A small warmth, a flicker of laughter, a crumb of joy. Meaning for Richard is not a sentence. It's a sigh. He doesn't know he's philosophical. He doesn't think of himself as wise. He's not trying to teach anyone anything. But in his simplicity, he reveals something that thinkers and poets have struggled to articulate. That the end of meaning isn't despair. It's freedom. When you stop trying to make sense of everything, you start to feel the beauty in anything. Richard's entire life is that realization in motion. He doesn't ask why life happens. He just shows up, hungry and kind, and says yes. The end of meaning doesn't frighten him because he's never believed in permanence. Everything in his world breaks eventually. The couch, the house, the rules of reality. He's lived through enough absurd resets to know that even endings aren't really endings. Meaning dies and returns in new forms, like laughter after silence. When one understanding collapses, another joke begins. His peace comes from that cycle, from knowing that nothing is final, not even confusion. Nicole once told him, "You don't take life seriously enough." But maybe that's what taking life seriously really looks like. Refusing to let its weight crush your joy. Richard's playfulness isn't neglect, it's reverence. He treats life as sacred not by worshipping it, but by participating in it completely. Every silly moment, every mistake, every laugh is his form of prayer. He doesn't overthink the miracle of existence. He eats it, he hugs it, he naps inside it. His faith is tactile. His religion is love. At the end of meaning, there's no grand revelation waiting, just the ordinary. And Richard loves the ordinary more than anyone. He finds holiness in burnt toast, in lazy mornings, in shared laughter around a broken table. Where others search for enlightenment, he finds it accidentally, in the simplest places, in the simplest moments. His wisdom is small enough to fit inside a smile. The truth is, Richard doesn't need the world to be meaningful because he already feels connected to it. His empathy fills the space where meaning would have been. When something bad happens, he doesn't ask what lesson it carries. He just feels it, hurts, forgives, moves on. When something good happens, he doesn't analyze why. He just laughs, grateful and unguarded. His lack of curiosity isn't emptiness, it's trust. He trusts that life, even when it's absurd, is worth living simply because it's shared. And that's the heart of it. The end of meaning is also the beginning of connection. When you stop searching for answers, you start noticing people. You start listening instead of solving. Richard doesn't need life to make sense because love already does. Love, to him, is the only real truth. Everything else is decoration. That's why he's never cynical, never bitter, never distant. He doesn't need to explain love to believe in it. He just feels it, constantly, even when it hurts. The beauty of Richard's worldview is that it doesn't deny the darkness. He's seen it. The exhaustion in Nicole's eyes, the anger, the loneliness, the absurd weight of trying too hard. He's seen the world at its most broken, and he's still chosen to smile. His optimism isn't blindness, it's courage. It takes strength to look at chaos and decide it's still worth laughing at. He isn't escaping meaninglessness. He's embracing it, cradling it, making it gentle. Sometimes, though, even he feels the quiet ache of wondering what it's all for. It comes in brief flashes, when the house is dark, when the laughter has faded, when his reflection looks older than he remembers. In those moments, he feels the weight of existence press softly against his chest. He doesn't panic. He doesn't search for answers. He just sits with it. Maybe he sighs, maybe he chuckles, then he whispers almost to himself, "It's okay." And somehow it is. That's the strange gift of Richard Watterson. He doesn't need meaning to find peace. His peace is unconditional. It doesn't depend on understanding or success. It lives in the act of simply being. He's a man who's learned to live in the middle of the question mark, unbothered by the lack of a period. His life is a kind of soft defiance against despair, a declaration that love, laughter, and breakfast are enough to justify everything. When you think about it, Richard's whole existence is an argument against the modern condition. The world keeps telling us to explain ourselves, to prove our worth, to earn happiness through purpose. Richard refuses. His life says, you don't have to deserve joy. You just have to notice it. He's the antidote to overthinking, to the endless search for why. He teaches that sometimes it's enough to simply say, I don't know. but I'm glad I'm here. At night, when everything has quieted, Richard sits alone in the glow of the fridge light. The world hums around him, small and vast at once. He takes a deep breath and feels the rhythm of life, the absurd, beautiful continuity of it. In that moment, there's no meaning left to find, only presence. And that's enough. The end of meaning isn't emptiness, it's clarity. It's the realization that meaning was never out there, waiting to be found. It was always here, in the warmth of being alive. He thinks of his family, of Nicole's strength, of Gumball's chaos, of Darwin's heart, of Anais' mind, and he smiles. They're all searching in their own ways. They all want to understand, to make sense of the nonsense. And maybe one day they will. But for now, Richard's job is simply to keep the light on, to be the still point in their spinning world. He doesn't need answers to give them comfort. He just needs to stay. And he does. Always. No matter how many times the world resets, no matter how many stories contradict themselves, Richard endures. His love remains. His laughter returns. His peace resets the universe by existing. He's proof that meaning doesn't need to be stable to be real. It just needs to be kind. When dawn comes and the light spills across the floor, Richard wakes slowly. The world starts again. The day will bring new chaos, new mistakes, new laughter. And he'll greet it all the same way he always has, with open arms, with open eyes, with the quiet joy of someone who doesn't need everything to make sense. Because at the end of meaning, there's only life. Strange, funny, imperfect life. And to Richard Watterson, that's the most beautiful thing there is.